Today's topic is one that I think is at the core of nature journaling practice. And I think that you're going to find that you've got some thoughts and ideas to share about this. What we're going to be discussing today is nature journaling mindset. What are the habits of mind that both make you a better naturalist, better observer, better journalist, but also allow you to keep at the practice or get unstuck when you're stuck? What are kind of mindset things that we can do that sabotage our ability to um, effectively engage with our nature journaling? And what are the things that we do that work? And so to get us started, what I'm going to ask everybody to do is just initially think about that question you're set. So the topic is broad. It is mindset. What kind of habits of mind either help you engage as a nature journaler or are essential for you to to get unstuck or to move forward, to do the kind of innovation that you like to do, what you find works. And I'm going to ask everybody just to we're all going to take maybe about a minute and a half. I'm going to ask you to write stuff into the chat, but don't hit send. What we're going to do is we're all going to hit send at the same time. Otherwise, what happens is you just start reading other people's thoughts and responses and responding to that. But this is a chance just to get our ideas out of our head and just to get some initial thoughts down on paper. That also is going to help prevent us from just getting wrapped around whatever the comments are of the first person who starts to talk. We're going to be able to have this kind of idea cascade.
Teacher voice.
with teacher voice, go for it.
Curiosity, compassion, and connection. Creativity is an important part of my self-care. Inquiry, excitement, wellness, mindfulness, sense of wonder, not know what it reminds me of. Have the mindset that I don't already know all there is to know about this subject. Approach it with a beginner mindset. Go ahead and write down questions that I already know the answers to. Don't filter what questions I ask. Then the better questions will start to flow. Get curious about it. If I get stuck, go back to, I should have.
I noticed, I wonder, it reminds me of.
Yes. Or see what attracts my attention about an object. At the heart of a nature journaling mindset would be to foster and nurture curiosity and creativity about your environment and living organisms. Engaging all senses is maybe the key. Habits of mind would be creating a regular practice, time to journal. I get stuck because I am not yet skilled at drawing. Also, other things I need to do distract. Not worrying about the pretty picture. Ideas, not art. Pictures help unstick the words. Words help you get over a picture. Keep focused on observation, curiosity, connections, and relationships. Figuring stuff out. What hinders? Not time to stop and journal. Help being purposeful. A comfortable enough place to sit for a while. Time and the way you can spend it. Awareness and ability. Weather, not having time when kids are around. I think that's a hinder. Starting with metadata, making notes of observations, small sketches of pieces of ideas to keep from getting stuck in mechanics of making a drawing. Write what I see, not what I started out planning to observe. Curiosity, wonder, willingness to not be perfect. Hindrance, thinking the page needs to be a finished product rather than thinking of it as a practice. A help, I like the idea someone had about having two journals, a practice journal and then another journal. Hinder, perfection. Help, baby steps. Try, just do one thing. Things that help me. Start again and then start again and again. It's just me. I want to remember this for later. I can make a difference by observing this. It helps my thoughts be less jumbled, getting it out of my head. Things that hinder me. What will person I want to impress or person I worry about judgments from think about this page? I can never get enough information. So-and-so did it better. So-and-so is the expert. No one else will ever read this, so why am I bothering? Having a plan, sit spot, something to observe. 2, prompts to practice, tech to try. 3, kickstart with word, contour, anything that breaks that white page. 4, anything goes, drawing from life, cartoon story, videos as in a documentary. Helpful. Perfection is not required. Hindrance, getting bogged down with trying to draw the fine details.
All right, we're off to a great start, team, here. Thank you so much for reading that. I really appreciate that. For me, being able to look at the words and hear them come in really helps my brain kind of grok onto those. Just sort of want to remind people about kind of guidelines. A couple of things. We want to hear whatever it is you're thinking and your ideas are. So I want to encourage everybody to participate, to engage, to get in there and share your thoughts on ideas, and at the same time sort of be sensitive. Am I dominating the conversation or not? How I want to make sure that other voices are heard, but one of those voices that needs to be heard is your voice. So let's start just with thinking about your, not so much about having to teach this to other people, just your own kind of habits of mind. Could somebody expand a little bit on an idea that you either came up with yourself or you saw here that really resonates with you, that you think is kind of a critical core mindset idea for your success in nature journaling? What's something that really is jumping out to you? And all you do is just sort of wave at the screen and we'll spotlight you. Chris, thank you so much.
Reading the wrong way. For me, it is setting it as a priority. And that just means deciding what things you're allowing yourself to get in the way of doing it and what things you're not willing to give up in order to do it. And I think I straightened much of that out by making a list of what the values were in journaling for me. And I did that as a journal page one day. I can't remember when. I'd love to be able to find it right now, but I haven't indexed my pages. But it really did straighten it out. And once you set that in your mind, then you don't have to go back there anymore. You know, it is a value and I'm going to do this no matter what.
Beautiful. So yeah, recognizing that this is something that on all of these levels is a priority, makes sense to you, and you've already made that decision. Then you're just giving your permission self, okay, yeah, there are other things that I could be doing, but this is one that is really important and I'm going to make the room and be intentional about it. So be intentional.
And I don't think you can teach it unless you really see the value in it. My own thought.
So you're saying also really internalize and soak up the importance of this for yourself.
Yeah.
I want to encourage everybody as we're going along here to sketch note the bejeebers out of this conversation. So you're going to articulate why it's important to yourself, and then you'll be able to articulate it to others and also to lead by your example. Love it. Can anybody, does anybody want to add to that, or to share a different thought?
Can I just go? I'd like to add on to what Chris just said about when you do it yourself, and then how that like you can't really teach it without doing it yourself. And I just finished up a session with high school students right before this, and I thought to myself, like, they're grade 12, they're 17 to 18 years old, and sometimes they don't even want to talk, let alone turn on their cameras or whatever. And it was just such an amazing experience to be able to give my own examples and my own reasons for why I do journaling, and what it means to me, and sort of letting them know that it's it's cool to do it. And that there's all these amazing things, and the conversations that we had were really quite beautiful. So I also truly believe in anything that you teach, you should be doing it as well, especially something like this, because you're going to give a personal antidote. You're going to be able to bring in those personal pieces, and be able to share pages from your own journal about ways that you created, or what your mind was looking like that day. And it's like, I think Jack said it once, it's like your brain is on paper, right? Like, what does that look like? What does my brain look like on paper? And then you're able to compare that with the students, and they say, this is what my brain looks like on paper, and extra, go on and go on. And so I just really wanted to agree with you on that. I just think it's so you really, to me, like, that was the perfect thing to sort of say. I really loved that, so thank you for that.
And something that you're really pulling out of that, Billy Joe, is that it's authentic, right? And kids have a very, very well-developed authenticity detector. And if you're telling them to go do something you don't care, they're going to pick up on it. And they've been told to do a bunch of things that adults would never do.
Time fillers.
Again and again and again, right? And so, but if you're sharing something that this is authentic. I love that. I love that. Let me jump over to Vicki. Vicki, I'm going to pull you in here.
Okay.
Hey there.
Hi, Jack. This is my first time in one of your sessions.
Welcome, welcome. I think you're going to find it's a ton of fun. Yeah, and also, so yeah, these educator forums are the ones where we have the best conversations.
Awesome. I'm sorry I came in kind of late, but I just wanted to see the theme. I know it's mindset, but when you had everybody write in their answers to the chat, what was the question? Was it?
It was kind of an open-ended thing where people were putting in, like, so when we talk about mindset and journaling, what kind of resonates for you? So either things that are getting, things that get you stuck, or things that get you unstuck, or core ideas that you want to be having in your head in order to make yourself more effective, or to have more fun, or to be able to engage more deeply with it.
Okay.
So we're playing with all those ideas of mindset.
Okay, then I'm gonna write my answer in there.
Excellent. We want to.
Okay.
We want to hear what that is.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's see. Can anybody else extend the conversation, or take a look through that list in the chat and see, is there anything there that you see that you think we ought to put a little kind of highlight around, or draw a little face looking to it in our notes? Anne Chadwick from Point Blue Conservation Science.
Hi. So yeah, I would say that this reflects my whole life philosophy as well as nature journaling. My mantra is sort of curiosity, connection, and compassion. And I'll add another C to that, which is the creativity part, because that just keeps me sane, relatively sane. And the connection part, I I've added that since COVID, I'd say. I really feel like it's made me appreciate connection to this community and to other communities, and appreciate what we're missing in some ways too. So kind of just a philosophical take, and how important nature journaling is for me. And I'm not a direct teacher. I support a lot of outdoor education programs, and I can see how these values also can boost what's going on out there in that world.
Yeah. So what you're saying, and really highlights and underscores the importance of being really intentional with yourself of why am I doing this? Why is it a priority? I have to be able to articulate that stuff, because there is tons of stuff that is clamoring for my attention. And if and the cutting edge of psychology is now in the forms of advertisements to get you to spend your time, right? So I think the most important currency that we have is our time, right? And there are lots of forces that are saying spend that here, spend that here, spend that here. And with those 4 C's, I kind of put them in as the 4 C's, not 4 seasons. The 4 C's, I've got those as sort of examples of, you know, how you could be framing this in your head, just to help your head be clear on, you know what, this is my priority, this is my priority. And when those other things are clamoring for your attention and your time, to be able to come back to whatever your core is and be able to say, I am going to decide this, rather than have those young bucks who just got out of psychology and marketing programs, who are trying to design distractions to absorb my time.
And I would say that those help with conflict resolution, with just approaching problems and opportunities, if you're looking at it with compassion and curiosity, and kind of that beginner's mind, that open mind. Yeah, I think those help in many, many ways.
I like that. Aisha, I'm going to bring you in on the conversation too.
Thank you. Well, as long as we've got the C letter going, I thought maybe this is when I would jump in with my thoughts. For me, it has been all about the word calming. And I personally, even though I've been teaching it to my students for years, jumped into it at the beginning of the pandemic when I was suddenly at home and teaching from home, and popped open Jack Law's big book. And I went outside and I started on the California poppy exercise, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. And discovered how soothed I was, because I was connecting with something I loved. And I've been talking to friends who are artists and have actually taken Jack's classes and and they're like, it makes sense that you're doing this, Aisha, because you've been observing for years. You just haven't been drawing about it in this way. And of course, you're just falling in love with it. And I have actually started sharing with my students that one of the reasons I journal is for the mind change that it brings, and that I calm down, and so that they notice in themselves how it makes them feel. So I've been adding that in because, I'm very much sort of the science teacher, but just love bringing that emotional intelligence in around everything we do. And it's been interesting. I would also share that I first started nature journaling with my students when second grade group. I teach K through 5, for those of you who haven't met me before here. And second graders developmentally, start leaping all over the place. They're jumping off the walls. And our garden just wasn't really big enough for that. I was like, can I please just take them to the forest and throw them out there for a few years and we'll come pick them up? But that wasn't an option. City garden. And I started actually doing some journaling and they calmed right down. Everybody settled down. I was like, whoa. And so, you know, I did a little unit with them and I bring it in each year. And now I watch sort of they dive in because they've been doing it for several years and they already know how to access that space in their heart and their mind. And as I've added in more tools from these conversations and Jack's work of, you know, it's also can be words and numbers. The few who were kind of resistant, I don't like to draw, I don't know how to draw. And I'm like, join the club. But this is not art class, but you do know how to observe. And so they've really jumped in too now that I've given them permission to just draw one small piece and maybe spend more time writing or measuring or going at it that way. And we're going sort of back and forth. I feel like now it's a dialogue with my students. And I've started saying to them like, hey, I'm journaling more and I'm learning from you, actually. I'm seeing what you're doing and going, nice strategy. Let me add that in. So.
Yeah, I like how, I mean, it's what you made me really think about is, you know, how often do I give my students or my children that opportunity to, like, if my goal is actually, you know, is the state of mind, is calmness. And I also think I'm recognizing that you're a science educator and your goal here is I want to get them to a state of mind where they have calm and peace. And how often and where and when do we give our students an opportunity to find calm? I know there's some mindfulness things that some classes are doing, and they'll kind of like, let's just do our breathing. Okay, so they do 30 seconds of breathing. Okay, now let's, you know, back into whatever the curriculum is. This is a deep dose. This is a deep dive of calm.
Yeah, and you know, this adds into like, I'm realizing more and more as sort of the environmental educator is like, we're teaching about things that are very anxiety provoking for older kids. You know, we got climate change and destruction and everything coming their way. And kind of a dialogue I've been hoping to have somewhere, somehow, and my school isn't going anywhere with it, but we need to give them, just as I'm looking for tools myself to take a break from the worry and to calm, I want to give them a tool set to keep being able to dive into the wonder just of what's right in front of them and I feel like nature journaling is a fantastic tool to shepherd them and ourselves through this. And I've gone to some meditations, you know, with Jack Cornfield and some day-long things at Spirit Rock about climate despair. And I've actually walked up to him and said, I don't know even how to proceed as a teacher of this subject matter. I'm just kind of losing heart. And he said, you have to focus on just the flower blooming right that moment, or the little ant that walked right past you. And it gave me a lot of hope. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that for me. And I'm going to keep bringing that in with my students as well. So thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. Where do you teach?
Well, the funny thing is I just resigned, actually.
Oh.
I teach
Because I'm thinking, I got to get my kids in your school.
No, you do not want to put the kids in my school.
Okay.
You would like your kids to have access to me, perhaps. I have a few parents who are like, we're not sure we're going to stay if you've left. Yeah, we were in person and I've never been through anything so miserable and dysfunctional, and other schools are not, schools are not handling it quite as badly. I've been asking around and it's just been specialist nightmare. So I don't want to go off on that tangent, but
so in that stressful, so you're talking about a school that is in crisis. It's a stressed environment. And in that, through nature journaling, those kids are able to find calm. That ups the importance of that even more. More. I mean, That's what, so we're not talking about some, you know, best case happy school. You're talking about a really stressed environment. And in that place, students were able to find a place of calm through the journaling.
Yeah, they've loved continuing to do it. We've been doing it
Yeah.
pretty regularly, all of them.
Thank you. Thank you. Vicki, I'm going to bring you in.
Hi. So I just wanted to mention, because this is relevant to what you just said, Aisha, I think, and I'm not sure if you've ever talked about this in your meetings, but has anyone tried blind contour as a way to start off drawing? Because I was recently doing that with a group, teaching them how to draw trees, and trees can be so, you know, overwhelming. There's just so much going on with them. But I start with the shape, because you can also identify trees in winter that way. I'm in New Jersey, so our trees lose their leaves. But you know, we talk about just starting at the base of the trunk, and then blind contour is when you do your drawing, but you're not looking at your page at all. All you're looking at is the subject. So the focus is really off the drawing entirely, and you really end up seeing so much more, because, you know, you're just looking at the tree. And anyone who's done it has told me that it's so incredibly relaxing, and I agree. I love doing it. And you know what's funny? Like, the drawing turns out better than if you're trying. It just looks so free, and I don't know. It really represents what it is you were looking at. So
there are moments in blind contours where you're kind of like, yes, that is that, like that sweep of that spot right there, that you can feel it.
yeah.
And this maybe is a kind of a very interesting segue just to kind of something that the blind contour does, is it gets you off of the perfectionism. And and maybe we can unpack that a little bit, that, you know, the idea that the journal page is supposed to look good, right? That it's supposed to be a pretty picture. And, you know, there are people who are nature journalers who regularly make pages where the pages look pretty. And if we look at that, we think like, oh, that's the way that my journaling is supposed to be, that this is about making pretty pictures. And so a lot of us just kind of go like, it is, I even in the comments, you know, some people were also kind of tagging into this, like, if this voice kind of comes up in my head, you know, like, oh, that doesn't look good enough, like, that's not right, no, right? That gets me all about what is this rather than that, right? It becomes all about the book and the representation of it rather than experiencing the phenomenon. So what are kind of some mindset tools or practices that we can use to get us to move us away from the perfectionism and into more of a connection with the with whatever phenomenon or organism we're looking at? Leslie, good to have you with us.
How are you? Thank you, Jack, for doing this.
Thank you for being here.
And everyone else for your comments and tips. One thing that, and I've mentioned this to other folks in the community, one thing that I decided to do for myself as a way to free myself from this mindset of perfection in my drawing was to start using a pen instead of a pencil. Mm-hmm. You know, my problem is, you know, I have this thing to aim for perfection. So I'm constantly erasing lines that I don't like. And that takes up a lot of time. And so my whole idea is to get to the drawing perfect instead of really focusing on what I'm looking at and just appreciating what I'm seeing. So I feel like, that has helped me because, I can erase once I lay down my line, and I have to be happy with it, and or if I'm not, it's too bad, and it's okay. It's not the perfect line. I can still just move on and just write down or draw whatever I'm seeing. But that has been freeing for me. And like we have to remind each other, it's not about the perfect picture, right? That's not what we're aiming for. So that's something and again, it's not something that everybody has to do, but it's something that I felt like I had to do, because I just was just so used to having that eraser and just constantly erasing, every line that I put down and redrawing it until I got it perfect. So that's something that has helped me.
That is really important, Leslie. There are students who use their eraser more than their pencil tip, and each time they're doing that, they're erasing data.
Mm-hmm.
You're erasing observations,
right?
And you end up with so much less on the page. That's very helpful.
Yes.
Other thoughts, dealing with the perfectionism. What are other ways of kind of getting around that, or dealing with it when it comes up? Because it does come up for all of us. A couple of strategies that I use. One is to be explicit with myself and my students. And so you've probably heard me say before, it's not about making pretty pictures, right? So the pictures are a tool to documenting and recording our observations. And so what I do is I say, if you get, if making this picture, making a drawing, helps you remember something more vividly, remember something that you otherwise would have forgotten, your drawing is successful. If it kind of slows you down, so you spend a little bit more time kind of getting into some interesting corner of something, and you come up with a question that you otherwise would not have asked, your drawing is successful. If it helps you communicate a thought or an idea, your drawing is successful. So it doesn't matter if it's a pretty picture or not. If it works for you to jog a memory, or to help you notice something, it's worked. And so I need to be explicit with my students about that. And I find that for myself, I need to regularly remind myself of that same thing, because I will find myself also out there, and I'm part of me like, oh, I'm supposed to make this that's, sometimes it's like, I'll look at something and like, how would I draw that? Oh my gosh, that's going to be hard to draw. And so here's a confession. Sometimes I'll just chicken out of journaling about something because it's like, it's complicated. And if I'm in that headspace where I've got to make it look like a pretty picture, I'm going to chicken out before I kind of get in there and start playing with that pine cone or whatever it is. And when I get myself out of that zone, it gives myself, then I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm just going to put this down. Like, oh, look what I noticed. Oh, look what I noticed. And also something that seems to be helpful for me in that is I'm starting to write all over the page also, add a bunch of written notes in, start measuring things. And what that does is it kind of takes me back to that, like words, pictures, numbers, triad. And then I'm going like, oh, my goal, that's right. It's not about having to make this pretty picture. I want to notice something. I want to document it. And I've got whatever tools I can bring to bear to do that. But I find myself, even as much as you've heard me say, don't worry about the pretty pictures, sometimes I find myself worrying about pretty pictures. And when it happens, I see kind of a clear shutdown of my engagement and willing to be vulnerable on the page. And it messes with my thinking and it's not as much fun. Vicki, love to get your sense on this, bring you back into that conversation. Yes. Oh, there you go.
Wait. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. This is just another idea to counteract perfectionism. Like my background is in art, and even in grade school, you learn the elements of art. So if you were to look at something and just notice, so the elements are line, shape, form, texture, space, and color. So if you were to break it down and like look at a bird and say, I'm only going to concentrate on the color right now, then you could just make like a color palette of the colors that you see and maybe make a note of what part of the bird you saw it on. And then it's not about your picture. It's just about, you know, what color do I see? Where do I see line? And like, is the line jaggedy or is it smooth? Is it like thick or thin or, and then, you know, the shape, you could draw the basic shapes where you could do the contour. The texture, that's a big one. You could either describe it or, you know, try to draw it. You know, how plants are fuzzy or this or that. Like there's so many textures out there. I think that's it. But then, yeah, it takes the anxiety out of trying to create a representation. And you end up noticing just as much.
So we're, you know, I think that, you know, just making some little color swatches is a great example of what we're saying here. That you make some color swatches and you go like, oh yeah, that's, you know, if I'm feeling verklempt about, you know, making working with my line, well, that's a safe way or place to dive in. It's not threatening just to make some color swatches.
Absolutely. And then you could teach them a little bit about mixing colors.
Yeah. I like that.
That's all.
Thank you. We're going to go to Linda and then Aisha. Linda, good to have you with us.
Hi, hello, you guys. Hello, team.
Hey there.
I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but I have a question. I have a 14-year-old grandson who is an excellent artist who has recently gone to taking his pencil and sharpening it so, you know, sharp in a drawing really elaborate things, but it's so tiny. He'll do a whole bunch of characters and it will be like a little flea circus. I mean, you can't see what he's doing anymore. He used to draw big and bold and now he's like really, and I've tried to cajole him. I mean, I have a lot of tools in my tool belt, but I can't seem to crack what he's doing. And I was wondering if anybody knew of any drawing games, or maybe you're aware of something, you see that in students that you work with and you have little, you know, come on, Arthur, get with it, or try something new or whatever. And I really have not been, I mean, I backed off from any shaming or anything like that where he would feel badly about that, but it's of note that he has like gone from this thing to this really kind of cautious thing. So anyway, there you have it. That's my question. The comment, some of the comments that you've been making about compassion and courage and connections and confidence and calm, all these things from becoming a student here have been really helpful to have that kind of humility to be more in his head, but I just can't seem to, well, you know, whatever. So now that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Linda. That's a really, that's an interesting question. I know that for me, when I was 7th grade and 8th grade, I did tons of little tiny drawings. And I did tiny little paintings. I had some little tiny soldiers that I would paint, and I would paint these little tiny things, and it was all about this little kind of tiny, like tiny little world. And I wonder if there's just something about. It was at a time in my life that I was feeling kind of overwhelmed with other things, and my first thought is, it's awesome that the child is drawing a lot, and just like, keep it going and say, like, oh, you're having fun doing that? Look, I got you a 0.3 millimeter mechanical pencil.
Absolutely.
Keep going. Keep going.
So,
keep going.
so on that subject, it does prompt me to be aware that he has really expanded his storytelling. And so, and his imaginary world with the COVID has been going in this other direction. And he loves nature and he's interested in nature, but this inner world that he's cooking up with these characters is really important to him. And so it gets, thanks for your comment, Jack, about making it feel like it's part of a developmental perhaps thing for him. Like he is going through a stage that he needs to go through by, kind of maybe control. It's more easy to control when it's littler.
and he's gonna get some crazy fine motor coordination.
He is.
Fine motor skills doing this. But then at some point, he's going to also kind of hit the wall of, you say, like, the expressiveness of my faces. I'm not really able to show, that this person is worried.
Yeah.
And I can't show that at that scale. I can show that they have a nose.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But I can't show that they're worried. And
Yeah.
so that size has its own limitations to it. And my hunch is that he will probably at some point, he needs to be in there right now, and he'll bump up against that and want to, there are like the zoom in, zoom out activity.
Yeah, I was trying that with him.
But I wouldn't do it to try to break him out of the habit. My hunch is, my guess is that there's a reason that he feels really safe being there right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
And it's going to be okay.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. And you're sharing your experience really helps me have more perspective about it. So, because he's going from this to this, and it was, I don't know. It wasn't something that I could understand very easily, but I didn't want to, but I could give him some space for it, but just question mark. So thank you for that.
And then sort of, also another good sort of idea is just to say, like, to help us in our art, one of the things which we do is we want to cross train. And so today we are out at the lake, and I brought a whole bunch of newsprint and charcoal vines. Right? And also I brought some white chalk, right? And so, and then you can be doing some big things with that. And kinesthetically, it is such, and so what you're doing is you're sort of training your body to do this instead of this.
Yeah.
And this has just such a different observational energy to it.
It does.
And that's, and just sort of say that, I'm not saying that what you're doing is wrong in any way. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
More of that. And it's not this or this, it's this and.
That's right.
Because when you cross train in this, right? When you draw from your fingertips, that's one thing. You also want to kind of connect with the arm and then the shoulder. And so if you actually have something where there's an easel,
Yeah.
And what you know, people, you'll see people when they're drawing on that, they sometimes, you can kind of get into whole body drawing,
Yeah.
and that people are kind of doing that as they're drawing. That is, so maybe just have
Thank
some,
you.
yeah, there'd be something to play with.
Absolutely.
But I
Thank
don't
you.
think there's anything wrong.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, I didn't think there was anything wrong, but it was just like a question mark. And so having this group actually where we're all kind of like out in the frontier working for, you know, really freeing more creativity and more connection with our world. I mean, and all kinds of ways that we're, you know, approaching it is so helpful. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Want to bring in Aisha. Hey there.
Goodness me, I don't quite remember.
Oh, it's
What I was
okay.
doing. It's okay. No, I've been thinking a lot about Linda's grandson, which is great. Great that I'm so glad you brought that up. And the only other thing, actually, I'll add something to that. You know, we've all been writing things in the chat for you too. But then I also realized that when Jack said the zoom in, zoom out activity, what a lovely combo activity that might be for both of you to do as partners. Like you do the zoom in, I'll do the zoom out, and we'll, you know, do this bonding journaling where we each have our strengths, you know, and you're affirmed in what you're doing, just to add in. I think the only thing, the other thing I was like, I really wanted to say how excited I was by Jack, you saying the perfectionism and all the tags you had that ended with your drawing is successful if you blah blah blah, your drawing is successful if you, because I'm always looking for repeat phrases to use with my students that kind of get stuck in their head. You know, they're all used to singing no big deal around the hose when their shoes get wet, because I sing it in the white crowned sparrow, no, golden crowned sparrow, no big deal, no big deal. And now they just kind of automatically do that. This is a kindergartners, so I don't have to remind them that it's no big deal to get their shoes wet and dirty. But I'm always now looking for catchphrases so they can, you know, say them to themselves when I'm not around. So I love this one of your drawing is successful if, and guiding them through it a bunch of times until I feel like they're able to just say that, oh, my drawing is successful because, or say it to each other, my drawing is successful because I noticed or I wondered, or,
Yeah.
you know. So I just wanted to affirm I was excited to get that phrase.
That's fun. And I find, and just sort of, I regularly bring that up again and again and again and again, because I think it really, it takes not just one pass at it to effectively move the goalpost. And so also what I do is once I set up that expectation, when I'm looking at students' work, that's a really important place to reinforce that. Because if I look at their picture and I go like, oh, honey, that's beautiful. What a gorgeous drawing. Oh, you did such a beautiful drawing.
They learn nothing.
They learn nothing. And it also says, actually, it is all about making the pretty picture.
Yeah.
Surprise, right? What I will do in an art class, so in a nature journaling context, I don't give feedback about art-related stuff. If I am looking, if I'm doing an art class, like, you know, here's a class on how to draw ducks, or shading or values, or, you know, if it's an art class, I will give feedback on art stuff, but I don't kind of label it like that's a pretty picture. That's not a pretty picture. I'll point out places where they're successfully using a technique and a strategy that other people could then copy. But I avoid giving the feedback of good job because you did a pretty picture. Because then everybody's just like, oh, thanks. So it really was about making a pretty picture all along, wasn't it? Another grown-up trick. Yeah. So that whole, oh, it's not about the pretty picture, it's all about the observations. You didn't really mean that, did you? Interesting. Because you'll get some kids out of their shell by telling them that, and then you kind of turn around and you reward all the pretty pictures. See if they come out of their shell again. They're not gonna. So there's the setting the expectation, and then there's giving the feedback. And when I'm giving feedback, I sometimes if I'm looking at a journal page and I can look at it like, this person's got a lot of experience drawing. That's a pretty drawing. I'll look at that and I'll go like, oh, whoa, everybody, look at this one. Check out this question that she's asking, right? And I'll point out something that is not about the pretty picture. And ideally something that's not even about one of the pictures. Like, I really like the way you're now integrating more quantification with what you're doing, right? You measured that and showed that this was enlarged 2 times. And that gets you kind of out of that, got to make a pretty picture tree. And that kid has gotten reinforcement for those drawings for a long time. And they don't need more of that, but they're happy to kind of take it if you want to dish it out, but also realize it will just sort of reinforce that, oh, the pretty picture thing. The last thing which I want us to talk about as a team here is the idea of a growth mindset. And growth mindset is I think a critical idea in all of education, and a critical idea in nature journaling. And if you are new to this, I recommend go see the Carol Dweck TED Talk on growth mindset. The basics of growth mindset is that if you understand and fundamentally believe the neuroscience behind the neuroscience behind what we now know about the way our brains grow and develop, it motivates you to try and to practice and to learn. And what the science says is that if you repeat things, if you work at things, if you are doing kind of deliberate practice and working at developing skills, your brain grows in response to these challenges that you give it. And that there's no sort of fixed trait you have. Like you're not like, oh, you're a good drawer, you're not a good drawer. Everything is, with the sort of brackets around it of at this point, right? Or yet is another way of sort of thinking about, like, I'm not good at math yet, right? But you have to fundamentally believe the yetiness of that. You can't just tack a yet on there and not believe it. But if you, so exposing kids to the neuroscience that shows how your brain changes through effort and work. So what's happening is those parts of your brain that are involved with those things, they get physically larger and denser. And you can see this in fMRIs. You teach somebody a skill and very quickly you'll pick up the parts of the brain that are involved with that growing denser. You can see it. And all learning is changing the structure of your brain. And so if you not just get exposed to this information, but if you really fundamentally believe that, then trying things that are difficult and challenging makes sense. Leaning into things that are difficult for you makes sense. And that gives you the permission to try and to build those skills. So we want to think of, like, what is the relationship to that sort of the fundamental growth mindset idea to nature journaling? Nicholas, I saw you had your hand up a moment ago. Did you want to?
Yes, thank you for that. In fact, this idea is blowing my mind, actually, and I would like to maybe discuss with you how to be able to apply that for young adults, because I teach at university level, and then I see sometimes, and unfortunately more often than less, a lot of these young adults are maybe very shy to use their mindset, and they were maybe taught not to be curious enough, just to follow some of the general frames. And then I want to push them to do a research in ecology, and research is all about curiosity, the same way that nature journaling is. And I would like to draw a parallel with that, and then make that happen for them. For now, the only thing I saw working was to bring them in the field, and just be in nature, and with or without doing nature journaling. But I see that just being outside makes a lot of the mindset and the possibilities. But I wonder how to do the next step, which is the growth in that mindset. And so that's something that is a bit tricky for me, and I would like really to push the envelope for these young adults in at that level.
I think that this idea of, I really recommend the Carol Dweck TED Talk. You can sort of see the impact of when people really absorb this idea. It's fundamentally life-changing, fundamentally life-changing. And it applies to, makes you realize that, your level of curiosity is a skill that you can practice and develop. You can train yourself to be more curious through work, and your brain will start to wrap itself around new structures built around inquiry and curiosity. It's a skill. Things like, doing mathematics. Like, oh, I'm not a math person, right? No, that's the voice of a fixed mindset. And the brain doesn't work that way. The brain doesn't work that way. But there's all these things that are pushing in our society, that pushes us towards kind of accepting a fixed mindset. And so, oh, I'm not a drawer. Oh, I'm not a math person. I'm not really a reader. I'm not a musical person. What we do is we will start to treat things as if they are gifts or a talent, an innate talent that some people have, and that means that other people don't have. So talents are things that some people have and some people don't. Skills are things that we develop through our work. And it's the work that makes you who you are. And the growth mindset gives you permission to do that. So whatever subject you're teaching, you can wrap into that concepts of growth mindset. So Joe Bowler, who was an amazing keynote speaker at our last Wild Wonder, is a mathematician. And she's created all these resources around teaching kids math through growth mindset. And they're utterly game-changing things. And it makes it, and when kids learn math using these approaches, all the kids in the underfunded school are math kids. And
it's a great achievement.
Yeah, and but you change your look on how your brain works, and it gives you permission to kind of go into these areas where otherwise you're like, no, I'm not. That's not something I can do. And even like the old these old notions we had of learning styles. So early in my educational career, the idea of learning styles was really big. And the idea is like some people are verbal learners, other people are auditory learners, other people are kinesthetic learners, other people are visual learners. What you have to do is you want to figure out what your learning style is, and then focus on that, and that's going to be your doorway to learning. And what we now know is no, it doesn't work that way. Is that everybody can actually benefit from using all these different styles and skills. And there may be one type that somebody might sort of generally prefer, and that's fine, and they can do that, and they get all these other benefits from doing all these other different sorts of things. But that, you know, because of that, you know, some people were taught like, oh, I'm not really a visual person, right? And to prove that, you know, I know that I'm an auditory learner, so I'm not a visual person, right? That's fixed mindset. So that, yeah, the learning styles thing has been sort of widely debunked, but that was cutting edge. Wow. And we can still take what's of that's useful. Yes, in our lessons, the more we're kind of approaching something from all these different directions, that's great. But that doesn't mean you want to then pigeonhole people into one way of thinking or another. And getting people out into nature, as you described, is critically important, because nature is infinitely complex. And if you get out there and can start to stimulate people's curiosity, you're going to run into phenomena that you don't understand. And that gets really interesting.
Yes.
And you can also climb trees while you're out there.
And then there's also this idea of using all senses. I feel that for regular classes, even though we use PowerPoints and movies or some little movements of grouping people in small groups, sometimes it's basically just listening, and then there's no active participation there.
It's learn through your ears and then through your eyes. So we've got two senses. Things come in through your ears and eyes. A lot of it is done through, like you say, right through your ears. And then we think that we're really upping the game when we also include the eyes. There's a lot more ways to go. And I'm about to go off on a tangent that will take us the rest of the day, so I'm not going to go there. But yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you.
So on this topic of growth mindset, does anybody in the community here have thoughts, ideas, something to share? I think we'll have this, then we'll shortly be kind of closing out our discussion here. But let's jump over to Chris.
I just have a short comment. When I've been studying growth mindset for a long time, but we called it lifelong learning. And I think the one thing that I remember that you can say about it is there's always more to know. That's the only mindset that really, let's see, an example is you don't earn some certificate that tells you that you know all you have to know about a subject. Same as final exams don't mean, that you know all there is to do. So when you're teaching, to teach that to students, that you never know enough. You only know what you know now. And I think that's an important thing. And once they get that, and once we get that as teachers or as humans, then that opens up the whole world to this notion that everything is open. I've just recently recovered from a stroke and sort of lost a lot of years, but I've found that it is what you intentionally do over and over again that brings things back, and it can change your whole life to what you spend your time on. And there's always more, that's the one thing. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, two kind of critical ideas there. The idea that that what is possible to know is infinite. And that there also aren't limitations on your brain of what you can
Right.
learn or understand. So it's not that there's like, oh, I'm not a math person. And you know, what is possible to know is infinite. The amount that human beings have figured out is the smallest fraction of what is possible to be known about the universe. So the potential for learning is infinite, both in subject, right, and topic, but also we don't have, you know, the old idea of an IQ is wrong. The idea of an IQ is wrong. So no offense or disrespect to you Mensa members out there, right? Congratulations for getting that score on your test. That's super, right? But what that score means is that on that day, at that time, that's the score that you got, right? And I've got a plant that is growing. I put a buckeye seed in water and it's sprouting, and I measured it. So that's its IQ, that's its score. I got its height, right? If I stop then, I don't get what it turns into next, and what it turns into next, and what it turns into next. So your intelligence is, it's a moving thing. It's not a fixed thing. Back when we had the fixed mindset, so the opposite of the growth mindset is the fixed mindset, right? And the fixed mindset is you've got what you've got. We used to think your brains kind of grew up to a certain point, and then in adolescence somewhere it stopped adding new neurons. And from that point on, it was just a downhill slide, depending on the speed of which depended on how much partying you were doing, right? Or whether you played impact sports. But we now know that human brains change through and grow throughout our lifetimes. And so that idea of like, I'm going to get, because it made sense. If your brain kind of grew up and then it stopped, and there's a limit to it, it would make sense to figure out what your number is, right? Oh, I'm a 42. What should I do with a 42? Okay, right? But no, that's not the way your brain works at all, right? Because that's what it is on that day of the test. And then you keep learning and doing these other things. You're going to develop these parts of the brain, and then you're going to develop these parts of the brain. And then you do this over here, repetition with effort, you'll develop, these parts of the brain. So the idea of this growth mindset takes that idea of IQ and says like, okay, that's nice to know your number on that day, but I don't care. I want to know what is your process of engaging with the world. And you said, as you said, being a lifelong learner and growing. Am I actively working at growing? Or am I just complacent with what I've got? And if our students understand that, what Carol Dweck and Joe Bowler have shown definitively is that when the students understand those concepts, it makes sense for them to try. And they do.
Yeah.
So, my friends, thank you so much for joining us today for our Nature Journal Educator Forum. It is now, we are going to, hold on a second. I'm going to go to, there we go. We looked at a lot of ideas today in terms of what kind of mindsets support us in our journaling, and we looked at how do we then transfer that to our students. And some of those are specific skills and some of those are big picture ideas. I think one thing we can all do is just to raise the concept of growth mindset to a higher place in our classrooms and our homes. Growth mindset is something that we're talking about around our dinner table at my house at least probably once a week. We're finding an excuse to kind of, I look for an excuse and kind of a connection with some sort of growth mindset theme. And if there's nothing that has kind of come up in our practice, then I will kind of, you know, I'll sometimes just pull up a random bit of growth mindset research and kind of like, you know, we'll study I'll bring up the case study of like how the brains of people who were studying to be cab drivers in London changed over the course of their practice. There's other studies looking at the changes in the brain structures of people who start meditating. There are other ones where they're looking at changes in the brain structures in people when they started to learn how to juggle. And your brain is a work in progress. And you do the work and it does the progress. And it keeps getting better. I think that is a fundamental part of, so what we're seeing here is that by teaching these nature journaling skills, we are teaching fundamental life skills. The application of this is so far beyond nature journaling, but nature journaling kind of pulls us into this kind of microcosm of all sorts of stuff that's powerful and effective. Thank you all for being here. And I look forward to more of these discussions. Vicki, it's your first time with us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. What a bunch of us have found is that that the best conversations we have about kind of the cutting edge of nature journaling are here in these educator forums. So if this was fun to you, hope to see you again here soon. Avea, in terms of closing us out here, is there anything that you wanted to share with the community? This is our co-host, Avea Moore.
There. Just wanted to encourage folks, if anybody else here are on our Facebook group of how to teach nature journaling, let's continue this conversation, you know? This is a really, really great conversation, and it would be fun to keep talking about it and to talk about the things that you know we all mentioned at the beginning help us, and things that are obstacles so that we can work and figure out how we take care of these obstacles. So let's keep talking about this. There's a whole bunch of fun things happening this week, so hopefully we'll keep seeing you in our community with all of the things coming up. There's going to be a really great conversation. Pan Pacific one on Friday, and that could be a great opportunity for more learning and seeing more nature journalers from around the world. So that will be at 4:30 Pacific time with Melinda Nakagawa, and we should be talking to people from Australia and Japan and other places. So let's keep learning, and thank you.
Dear friends, stay safe. Thank you for your commitment to our children, to education. It makes the work that you do makes a huge difference. And I will see you all again soon.